And it's time to talk to the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Trade and Industry, Peter Munya. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
How is the year?
The year is okay. It's speaking well.
Right.
Yeah, despite some of the challenges.
Yes.
And, the unfortunate incidents that happened the other day. Yeah.
Great. And I think we're here to talk about the Big Four agenda. Not I think, actually we're talking about the Big Four agenda, the manufacturing pillar. But before we even do that, you're in charge of Trade and Industry. And obviously, towards the close of last year, we saw a report indicating that the number of tourists have gone up, meaning that the investor confidence is also going up. The business and trade is going up. But now we have such an incident that happened at Dusit D2 Hotel. How does that impact on us, especially the economy of Nairobi?
Well, it certainly does impact on us in terms of perception, given that tourism as a perception issue and is sensitive. But Kenya is resilient, and terrorism is global. So even other countries have been victims, and globally people are learning to understand that this is a problem that we must all deal with. Without trying to view like happened before. That, if when something like that happens in a certain country, then you blow it up to look like it is general insecurity and travel advisories. Now, even developed countries are appreciating that it's a problem that requires a global approach, concerted effort between all of ourselves, and then not the traditional approach to dealing with security and issues. Right. So I think generally, I don't think the impact will be as much as it was before then. Now I think people understand and view that this problem is, when you live with an enemy, sometimes the enemy is faceless, lives with you. You need to work together to deal with that kind of a problem.
Indeed. So let's delve into the Big Four agenda that manufacturing is supposed to be. And I remember on the 12th of December 2017, when the president was announcing his focus for the 5 years of his second term, he was talking of a determination to raise the contribution of manufacturing sector to the GDP to about, was it 15%?
15%.
Yes, 15%. First of all, how on course are we in going about that agenda?
No, we are very well on course in dealing with that agenda of raising our GDP in manufacturing from the current 9% or 8.5%. There is that conservative view to 15%. And we are, right now concluding the planning for the next budget and the interventions we are going to do in the coming financial year. But I'm sure you've seen we've been engaged very heavily in terms of improving infrastructure for industries to expand.
Right.
Both in our, export processing zones. We are also currently trying to see how we can improve infrastructure for the small scale traders. I'm sure you remember when the president at some point said that we haven't done much in terms of assisting the small traders who make a big impact in terms of employment and business in the country. So that infrastructure is now on course in terms of improving, in terms of providing common user facilities for small enterprises in the country. We are working with counties also to develop industrial parks. We think counties could do a great deal in terms of agro-processing, because one of our major focus is to see value addition for our agricultural products.
Right.
And counties have been coming up with land, saying, set up industries here and there. And we are finalizing a policy on how we collaborate with counties.
Okay.
Some counties are ahead in terms of working with our investment agency like Keninvest, training their people, directing investors to those particular counties.
Right.
Even piloting in terms of training some of them.
Okay.
But we want to have a global approach in terms of having a policy that is across the board, that works with all the counties.
Right.
Of course, those that won't be speedy won't be able to move faster.
Yes.
In terms of getting investors to come in the country, because apart from local investments in industry, we require bigger investors also to come so that we can produce from here and reduce imports. That has been one of the biggest challenges, Kenya becoming an importing country.
Yes.
And therefore making it very difficult for anybody, setting up here, because if you are able to acquire and get cheaper imports from China, from India, from elsewhere.
Okay. And
local capacity to
yes.
to develop, to industrialize becomes very difficult.
Okay.
So what our strategy has been, even as we support those who are already established, the industries are there, we need also to attract major players in the industrial sector to settle here.
Right.
And one of the various strategies we are doing. One of them is those meetings you have seen us doing, going to China, going to meet those industrialists, talking
Yes.
to them. And there has been a big steady flow of companies that want to set up here.
So
the other thing we've been doing is to give them incentives, because
Yes.
basically government work is to give people incentives, tax holidays, support them in terms of investing. And that's what we have done. If you look at our investment code, you'll see what we give to investors. We give you, sometimes we negotiate with you what exactly do you want. If it is land, we've already putting up land banks across the country, including the counties where lands have been given. You can access that land. We have invest codes, land, depending on what you want. If you want to settle in the export processing zone, there are certain tax incentives that you are given.
Okay.
If it is a normal factory you are setting up, you are given incentives in terms of setting up infrastructure. You are supported by government and all that. So there is a robust program in place to get investors to come.
Yes.
And there is already serious, you look at the FDI, people coming to invest in Kenya. Kenya is the third biggest destination for private investments inflow into the country. Look at
in Africa.
In Africa, look at the index you see after Nigeria and South Africa, the other biggest economies. Kenya is the next. Okay.
Was it? I want us to focus on.
And if you look at the numbers, not just the amount. If you look at numbers, Kenya is even number one in terms of. I'm not looking at the global amount of money coming. Okay. In terms of numbers of those who are coming.
Okay.
So that tells you that policy is working. I just wanted to make that point so that people can understand. Yes.
I want us to be very specific, because here you're saying that you're still coming up with a framework or policies on how to guide this process. But we're in 2019, and according to the president, we
are not coming up with framework.
Let me explain.
We already have a framework.
Get the question first. We're in 2019, and we want that by 2022, the manufacturing sector is contributing at least 15% to the GDP. So you're saying that counties are coming up with the industrial parks. The few counties that we have been lucky to visit, we do not see new industries. And shortly,
Sam, you need to understand what I just mentioned. Counties as the next strategy, but the national strategy of industrialization is on. It is working. The law is there. The incentives are in the codes. The support that investors receive are already there. New industries are coming up. If you go to EPC, for example, where I was the other day, you can see infrastructure is being modernized, and there are many companies setting up there. Okay. Some of them waiting because of the delays that have been there in terms of creating more space. Others are doing their own investment, because it's not just in EPs and days that people invest. A lot of them are looking at textiles, most of the leather, mainly pharmaceuticals. If you want data, I can give you many of the companies that are, some are in the waiting list, others that are already setting up.
Okay.
What I was telling you is that in the current coming year now, we also want to look into counties, see how we can assist the counties. Because most investors who come into the country are really interested in the bigger commercial centers. Nairobi, mainly, Mombasa, Naivasha. Those are the main areas of interest between countries. But we are saying we also want to see what we can do to have investors also go further into the country, because we want to spur a development everywhere. So I'm not saying we are starting. It's the counter strategy I was telling you. We are finalizing. But in terms of national strategy, we are already there.
It's in place.
Now, if you look at when investors come, there are three key area issues that they look at. They look at, of course, capacity to access the local market and the capacity to sell in the regional market, the East African market, commercial market, and all that. Kenya is a gateway to all those markets. If you look at when they come here, all of them will say they want to be able to access those markets. They want to set up here and then be able to sell to those places. There has been a problem with the law in terms of if you are, for example, you come and set up and the license to operate under special economic zone, for example, there are challenges in terms of accessing those markets. That is the law we are reviewing now. It's one of the things I'm telling you we are doing at this stage.
Do you know how long that might take? So that
I've already concluded. We have actually done a consultation. A report is ready. I should be receiving it any time. And then now we want to move to Parliament to have that law changed to remove that hindrance.
So in your estimation, how long would that take?
I don't see it taking long because it's basically amending an existing law that is already in use. It's just improving on it, and basically is providing an opportunity for whoever sets up in a special economic zone to be able also to access the regional market, so that you're able to sell locally and also be able to sell in the regional market. So I don't see another 2 months. 2 months. Another 2 months, because it's a minor amendment that is coming up. Now we have also finalized the investment policy that has been there for a long time. I've already signed it up. It's going to Parliament. I mean to Cabinet. It's actually waiting. It's one of the documents waiting in Cabinet. The investment policy will give and deal with very many issues that have also been affecting investment again. One of the issues the investment policy will deal with is obviously there has been those complaints, that there is too much focus on foreign investment. So we want to see how we can balance, so that in certain critical areas you require partnerships between local investors and foreign ones, and that policy provides for that. We want to streamline also issues of work permits, issues of residency, so that there's more transparency, and the challenges some of the people find when they come are also removed. But at the same time also make sure that, investors also benefit the local people, so that if you come here, you are only allowed to come up with the critical stuff that you are, the very technical, critical stuff that you would require for your confidence, but then you are also required to hire local staff in your investment.
Are there any specifics on percentages of how much should be locals, how much should be foreigners?
The policy usually is broad. Now regulations will now, which we are already working on. We'll go into the specifics.
All right.
But the policy has gone through a review, stakeholder engagement, everything. It's now sitting in Cabinet waiting for approval any time from now. Yes. And then, of course, also increase the level of foreign investment. Right now, you have 1 million shillings. You are an investor, you can come and invest in the country. We think that is too little. We want to raise the bar a little bit, so that we have that, all the balance.
We'll come back to that, Waziri, but let's listen to what the President had to say on December 12th, 2017, when he was reading out the vision on the Big Four agenda, is specifically on manufacturing.
During the next 5 years, I will dedicate the energy, time, and resources of my administration to these Big Four. The Big Four will create jobs which will enable our people to meet their basic needs. Under the Big Four plan, we will support farmers to plant cotton, which we will guarantee to buy. We have revived Rivertex and are in the process of reviving other textile plants. And we will now give incentives to investors to build more modern ginneries and textile manufacturing plants.
How far is that?
Already Rivertex is revived. We are actually, if you visit, and I organize for India to visit soon to see what has happened. Modern machinery has been installed there for textiles manufacturing. The local cotton production actually can't feed Rivertex. A lot of cotton is coming from Uganda to be able to satisfy that factory, even before it is completed. So that is already achieved. It is now 80, I think almost 90% complete. So the commissioning will be very soon in terms of the whole factory now working. But it has been incremental. It's not that you are doing the factory, then you start processing. It is already going on. I can confirm to you that the fabric that is required for doing the uniforms for police and the military will come from Rivertex.
Okay.
So the quality that is required and the range of fabric and textiles that are required for the local market so that we stop importing from other countries is already there.
But specifically on the cotton farmers, that the cotton promise was to ensure that they are growing cotton and assuring them that you'll buy it from them.
It did. And the challenge has been the approval of the BT cotton because the varieties that we have of cotton have under a lot of challenges. And the plan has been to provide this seed that has succeeded in India and China and elsewhere. But you know now how difficult our processes are in this country, where you have to go through this stakeholder engagement, whatnot, before you arrive at something. And that journey has taken long. But you know now we have concluded the testing, the field testing in Munya, and that cotton is going to be introduced any time from now, because the testing and the validation and the approval from our regulatory authorities to make sure it's safe we are almost there. We are now putting in budgets. That's why I was telling you about budgetary provisions to be able now to start the revival of the engineries and the cooperatives that were running the engineries. So indeed we've been behind in terms of this, but again, those constraints that requires our constitutional framework that requires to do certain things, go through certain processes, have delayed us on that score.
Right.
But cotton is still growing in Kenya. People are still growing. Uganda has better climate in terms of growth. That's why they're able to, even the traditional varieties still, they can produce a lot, and they don't have a capacity like we have in Rivertex. Rivertex capacity is so huge that it will absorb cotton from across the region anyway. But that does not mean our farmers should be left behind. We are implementing, and we are on course to implement that presidential directive.
I'm asking that question.
And in this supplementary review, we should have resources to be able to intervene in terms of cooperatives, farmers cooperatives, and revive of those ginneries, and also the seed that is required to be able to produce quality cotton for the farmers. I want you to know also that we've been doing a lot in terms of leather, because we've specific
just
values.
Before we get to leather, let's focus on textile first, because recently I was in Kisumu, I believe the last week of November 2018 or the first week of December, and you come face to face with this industry, Kisumu Cotton Mills, that was very vibrant in the early years of 70s into 80s, but now because of what happened with the privatization, Kikomi, Kisumu Cotton Mills, and the bad policies of liberalizing the market and bringing cheaper imports into the market. So now we no longer have that factory. Cotton farming is no longer as vibrant as it was. So you're saying that you're still waiting for approvals for this seed. But then again, the economies of these regions, which would benefit from this kind of investment, they're still suffering. How long should these farmers have to wait?
Yeah, I've already said that It's not going to be long. It's not going to be long. And already we are in this month. Supplementary budgets will be provided for us to start those interventions at that level in terms of dealing with governance issues and revival of journalism. Remember that part of our problem also is not just government. We have a lot of focus on government, but we also fail to look at the issues of the challenges of governance that are there that we have to deal with to revive some of those sectors. So we are on course. We want to acknowledge there's been delays, but we are on course in terms of dealing with challenges in that particular value chain, just like we are dealing with textiles. If you look at exports, for example, in the textile sector, you realize it's one of the major exports to America from local factories, and it is expanding.
Yes.
So all we require is deal with that challenge of having to buy fabric from elsewhere, then bring here, and then add value and sell outside. Once we revive the local production properly, and we are able to produce the textiles and apparel locally, then that will spur growth of that sector and provide the necessary employment. And the factory is coming. It's huge. We will expand, but it's a huge factory. So I acknowledge that.
Yes.
But we acknowledge that we have been slow. We've been slow in terms of sorting out that, in terms of implementing that vision. But we are on course.
So, Waziri, when you looking
back at all those years, nothing has been done, and things are being done now. I think it's better also to acknowledge that there is focus.
That's right.
Yes, because Kenya was not born when the current president was elected. There has been historical mismanagement that you can't have a cut and fix solution.
That's true.
So looking at efforts that have been made and they are successful, we can only add to that and be able to reach where we want.
That's true, Waziri. And of course, on the screen you can see the pictures of what used to be the Kisumu cotton mills, what remains just very rusty structures. And
indeed, it's terrible.
Yes.
The trouble is that that factory is already private. It was sold.
Yes.
So if you have to set up another one in Kisumu, probably have to think about acquiring land and setting up infrastructure. Now, we looked at the global picture, because really what matters right now is not where the factory is located. Let me go to this. I want you to understand that. We want to look at the bigger picture.
Yes, I appreciate that. Yes. The specific question I'm asking is because when you look at the challenges that, for instance, Kisumu has faced with the industries, there are things that happened that it got to where it is. So even as we reorganize this, because now the government is paying attention, how do you ensure that currently we have a market that allows second-hand clothes, that allows new clothes from different markets, especially the Asian continent? How do you ensure that the local industries will be able to produce at a cheaper, whatever, an affordable cost, and also compete with cheaper imports coming from outside? What are those measures that you must put in place to ensure that the importers do not have a better access to the market than the local industries?
Indeed, you are spot on in terms of protection of local industry and building local capacity for us to be able to compete. As I've said, we started with Rivertex. The capacity is very big. We will move to other towns like Kisumu and other places to see how we can revive those factories. But coming back to your point, the reforms we have been doing at KEBS, the Kenyan Bureau of Standards, making sure that substandard goods don't come into the country, is already bearing fruit. But you also know the challenges we are faced with that, local businesses saying we are running them out of business. Those businesses that have been depending on imports, on those imports. But looking at the bigger picture, we are tightening those inspections standards. Remember now we have already implemented a law that we gazetted on 1st of October that if you are importing anything, you inspect, those things have to be inspected from the country you are buying them from. This is what we call pre-shipment inspection process. So we have appointed competent companies that run laboratories in those countries where you are importing to inspect for us.
Right.
And then when you bring those goods, you have a COC, a certificate of inspection, that shows that they are quality goods that meet Kenyan standards. Now, if you import and you don't do that, you bring them to Nairobi right now, we will force you to ship them back to the country of origin.
There's not even a penalty that used to be charged.
The penalty?
Because previously you would be charged a penalty.
Previously you would be charged basically inspection fees, higher inspection fees. Yes. Then you pay caps, and then the goods come.
So now that will no longer be there.
Now, I did the last those who do not know the law, and we've done the last. I know there is a pressure now because there are people who have done those importations. You have been looking at the social media, you will see people tagging me and even tagging the president saying, oh, Mombasa, things are not moving. It is those importers who still continue insisting on buying things from wherever, from China and other places, bring them to Mombasa and insisting on local inspection. And that's where corruption comes in, because somebody has to be paid to bring those things. If you see people insisting, when it is easier for you to have your goods inspected wherever you are coming from, and then they come straight into the market, and now delays in Mombasa, and people are complaining about delays. You see people insisting on bringing them. It is because they are part of that network that is bringing substandard goods into the country. So we are really telling them, this thing has to stop.
So with the new way of doing things, you just be inspecting from your country, from your source country, but not doing it here?
Non-destination inspection. That is the law now, as we speak.
But
from October.
But don't you think there will be a challenge? Because earlier on, that is last year, there was a challenge with, there were investigations into some sugar that came into the country. And of course, the Kenya Bureau of Standards was being asked why they did not inspect and ensure that the sugar that got into the country did not have some of the heavy metals. Of course, that report was trashed by Parliament, but nevertheless, there were those allegations. So don't you think it would also be important that the local standards body is able to look at what is coming into the country, despite...
The local standards body will do what is called random inspection. Random. But we want to rely strongly on the people who have been licensed and recruited to do inspections abroad. Usually, if we do random sampling and they fail, we punish them. They are fined, they hefty fines, and then they are suspended. And you remember, during that crisis, we already suspended 2 companies. One Chinese company and SGS from the one that in the particular market of Asia. We suspended them for 6 months and fined them hefty fines. We think this system is more reliable because then you have somebody you can take to account. You have a company, a professional company that does inspections across the world, that has reputation, that will be careful. Now, but if you have to rely on officials of KEBS at the local level, my friend, you go back to the old mess that was there.
Why?
So we are not... Why? We've done it all over the years and you have seen. So we are not going back there.
So is the challenge that we cannot trust our people, or are they institutional challenges?
Sam, this is a global practice. It is easier to inspect goods from where you are buying.
Okay.
Because if you bring them and they are substandard, what do you do with them?
Destroy.
Destroy? At whose cost? It costs a lot of money to destroy goods. It costs money, it is expensive to the environment, and all those things. There is a problems of going to court to stop destruction and all those things. Then global practice, which we have adopted, is that before you ship goods from wherever you are shipping from, have them inspected there and certified that they meet standards. Then bring them. That reduces the danger of substandard goods coming to the country.
Okay.
And that's what's done over the world.
Okay.
So we can't go back to a system that has failed, that has not worked anywhere. If we go back to it, we end up going back to
that's what I'm trying to be specific and asking what the challenges. Is it institutional challenges or people that cannot be trusted?
It is not institutional. It is more of what works. It is what works. Okay. Because you see congestion, once you say inspect at the destination, you also contribute to the congestion at the port. Because all those containers must be stored there, and you go through the processes of picking samples, taking them to the laboratories, 14 days of waiting, all those processes.
All right.
You are congesting the port. Why don't you inspect from where you are buying?
That's fine.
So that when you are bringing those goods here, you are sure they meet the standards. Unless there is another agenda other than...
That's fine, Waziri.
Yes,
Let me take you back to, not back actually.
So I wanted people and the public to understand that if you hear noise about containers staying in Mombasa right now, it's those people who are contravening this law that is already in place. Okay. And I want them to know that government is not going to be lenient on this particular issue any longer. Yes.
Let's look at, there was another story that we had on the 1st of January 2019, the first day of this year.
Yes.
We titled it The Falling Hub by Enoch Sikoli. It was featuring Nakuru town with its past of very many industries, talking about Everready, some bakeries that were processing breads, obviously. There's some food industries there. And now we have lost so many of those. If you have those pictures, maybe you can run them. So the question I want to ask you is that we are coming from a history that Nakuru was such a business hub that people didn't struggle to find job opportunities. Now we do not have those. Of course, we have some new industries, but those are dead. So as we get into enhancing this pillar of manufacturing in the Big Four agenda,
yes.
You have explained what you're doing to ensure that you have investors coming into the country. You have talked about ensuring that, for instance, if it's in the textile, that quality has to be emphasized.
Yes.
But how do we ensure
yes.
that these industries do not run out of business and collapse, leaving so many families without a livelihood?
Yes, I want you to understand it, because this is a long history.
Yeah.
If you want to look back, you see Kenya was a time we were thriving as an industrial country. Then structural adjustments came that were forced on us. We liberalized, so that is, import became easy. Now you can import anything. Now if you want tiles for your floor, you just fly to China or India and bring them. That liberalized model is what brought down our industries completely. The Asian tigers that we talk about all the time, many of them refused to participate in the structural adjustment programs.
Yes.
They said no. Now we have to rethink in terms of what to do to support local industries. And part of what we must do, as I've said, is one is make sure substandard goods don't come into the country, because most of those things that are brought in are actually substandard. Tiles that can't last you, you look only at the price, but you don't look at the quality and the standards that have. Standards is very important. Standards infrastructure is a key enabler for industrialization. Without that, you can start industries, people won't even invest when they know they can't sell because the competition is too much, uneven competition. So standards is very, very important. Then we must also continue giving incentives, tax incentives, to attract investors and also maintain local investments that we are already giving. We must also, and key to this is also look at the cost of the goods we produce, competitiveness, because that has been a major issue. Are our goods competitive with other goods being produced elsewhere? What is making our goods expensive as compared with other goods? And some of the things that we are looking at, for example, and we are looking at, and the president has actually been on it consistently, in looking at power.
Cost of power.
Cost of power, because power is a key enabler. There is no industry that runs without power. Water is cheaper, we may be able to, but power is powering the industries is critical.
Right.
And right now, I can assure you there is a major review that is going on to see again what rebates can be given to industries and to small businesses to make sure that the cost of power is comparable with our neighbors. Because major target for our market is the local market, and of course other markets like AGOA, European market and all that. Those ones we don't have a major problem. The biggest problem, if you look at even the statistics, is falling our exports to our neighborhood is going down. And they are going down because of that problem of competitiveness, which we are addressing. Right. We are addressing in terms of, for example, all raw materials that are imported for industry now, are also rated. The other major issue we are looking at it is about cost of power, and I can assure you, we are at it. Anytime you hear announcements on reduced tariffs for industry, and for SMEs.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's someone here who is asking, the CS is talking about manufacturing companies, yet we can't manufacture even toothpicks. What measures is the CS putting to ensure that by the time he leaves office, we have something like Munya Industries, like what we heard Mishuki rules? I don't know whether it's statistically or it's factual to say that there are no toothpicks manufactured in Kenya, but it is a fact that there are some that are imported. Why can't we have some of these basic products processed in the country? What measures do we need to put in place to encourage such kind of consumption?
I have already explained, Kituku, what we are doing and sometimes what we do.
No, I'm talking about consumption. The consumption end.
Consumption is not a problem because if you are buying them from wherever and they are being sold in this market, it means there is consumption. Problem is not consumption. Actually, if you ask me, the Kenyan capacity for consumption is much bigger in the region. Our economy is much bigger, and internal capacity is much bigger. That is part of the reason why some industries will not even bother about exporting. They will just produce for the local market. So consumption is not an issue. What I've told you is an issue is issues of substandard goods coming through our ports, and not just substandards. I can even go further. Even people don't pay taxes, or taxes are, undervalued. When you bring goods, then there's undervaluation.
Do you know them?
In terms of government has been taking action. If you have seen people who have been taken to court, you will see. I mean, action is being taken to make sure that competition, there is fair competition between what is imported and what is available locally. That is the only guarantee that will make people start investing, because it is individuals who invest.
I'm asking
it is not government that will set up industries.
Yes.
Government will create an enabling environment for the private sector to set up industries. And we are dealing with those challenges that have been making it difficult for the private sector to set up new industries or to expand the existing ones. And I've given you already incentives that are being given. One of them is raw materials. If you are buying raw materials to come and set up an industry, zero rated. There are no taxes. Taxes are brought to zero so that you can be able to access those raw materials. Yes.
I'm asking that because, for instance, if you focus on the textile sector...
we were focusing on a few value chains because we may not be able to deal with all the value chains at the same time. So we were looking at textiles. We are also looking at leather.
Blue economy.
Blue economy. Blue economy basically is, boost the industrialization of processing of our fisheries, both for local market, because you is a major local market and the regional market, and export, because it's a premium fisheries, premium product that can fetch markets everywhere. And again, you have seen the president properly engaged. Right now, we are finalizing a framework on how to invest in the blue economy in the Lewaton Fisheries Industrial Park that is coming up. Task Force has concluded a framework that is also going to be gazetted in the next few weeks. That will also again give investors in that park tax holidays and also improve the infrastructure. Putting a lot of money to improve the infrastructure there. This will spur investment in the fisheries, validation, improve our capacity to go into our share of the sea to fish before it's foreign companies from Taiwan and other places that have been exploiting our exclusive economic zone in the Indian Ocean and making money. The focus on the blue economy is to make sure that we are in charge. And you've seen the president also launching the Coast Guard to make sure that no illegal fishing there from trawlers from outside the country.
Right.
And so we are already implementing that.
So Waziri, in your view, what is so hard that the counties of Kisumu, Homa Bay, Migori, and Busia that have a coastline, I mean, a lake line, what is it? A shoreline, yes, a shoreline. What is so hard that all these years they have not been able to establish a proper fish processing plant or industry bearing in mind that Fishnet died, that was in Kisumu?
Well, I think the challenges are very many. We would, unless we analyze all of them. Part of the problem, I would want people to know that the poor management of fish resources within the lake have led to almost exhaustion of what is available. So before we even talk about processing and all these things, we talk about how do we restock?
Yes.
The section of part of the lake, because the bigger part of the lake is really in Uganda and Tanzania. But even our own area, we've done a lot of exhaustion. Fishing, small fish that can't, no controlled fishing and all that. So the counties of Kisumu and Omambi and others need to start working on how to do the restocking, so that we regenerate the fish stocks that were there. Because they are not there now. I'm sure you also know.
Are there direct conversations with these people? Because the fishermen on Lake Victoria, they are fishing each and every other day, every day of the year.
This is a conversation that needs to be held between the relevant agencies that are involved in that particular, and I think the counties are at the center of it. Because we have also this tendency of wanting the national government to do everything. Yet we have devolved governments down there.
Yes.
And I think national conversations have to be held to say, what are counties also doing? Because you can't have counties with all those resources being sent there, and it's not small resources, and they are doing nothing, waiting for the national government to come and intervene on everything.
But Waziri,
I said, what not national government?
Waziri,
story of the national government is over now. I'm talking as a former governor.
Yes.
Who did a lot in the county where I was a governor. Yeah. So I'm not talking just because I'm minister in charge of trade. I'm talking as a governor who has experience, who knows the capacity of counties to do a transformation where they are if they took time to do it. And then where they require help in terms of, partnerships with the national government, there is a whole framework for that. So agriculture is largely devolved, Sam. You know that. Agriculture is largely devolved. If you look at the budget for agriculture, you realize most of the money goes to the counties.
But for the manufacturing
extension services, putting in inputs, all those things are devolved. Now, counties sit down and don't do anything, and they continue blowing.
For the manufacturing pillar to succeed, Waziri,
manufacturing pillar require the inputs, the raw materials. They will come from the counties.
Yes.
So that's why I'm telling you, we are also working with them. I'm not saying we are leaving counties alone, but I'm saying they must also start taking their responsibilities and their mandates seriously. Because after all, national government can only advise and implore them that we work together. You can't force them under our framework.
Sure, you can force them, but of course the policies at the top.
But I was also moving to say that there is also a lot of cage farming that goes on in the lake region that is making a big difference in terms of providing employment and also providing the fish products that are required. But I want to agree with you. We need to do more in terms of utilizing the water sources, that we have within the country. And that brings me to that point I'm telling you, we require serious engagements between national government and the counties in terms of production on primary level, because agro-processing, that I'm saying, is one of the key drivers of industrialization. Won't work unless we have those raw materials available and in sufficient quantities.
Right.
Some of the investors we talk to, they ask you about availability and sustainability of supply before they invest. Because people say we are producing bananas. But you look at the quantities of bananas being produced that can power industries and produce what is required for the market is very small, minimal.
Right.
So we need that coordinated approach, a strategy that interbrings synergy between national government at the primary level of production and then also at the level of setting up the industries.
Right. Waziri, we're running out of time, so I want to just quickly ask you the question about the manpower, because even as we invite foreign investors, even as we try to grow the raw materials, if it's in the food industries, the Kenyan youth, who I believe are the target in terms of employment, they'll need to have certain skills.
Yes,
so
indeed.
Is there anything we are already doing to ensure that apart from riding borders and tuk-tuks, they are having to go through a schooling system and get certain skills that they'll need to utilize in these industries?
Indeed, you are spot on again in terms of skills, because industries will come, but if you put up an industry and you don't have skilled people to work there, you may have to bring those skilled people from outside. And remember, that's one of the issues people keep raising about SGR, for example. You know, having too many Chinese people working there. But if you want an SGR to function, start running, and you don't have the skills that are required, before you develop them, you have to have some people working there from elsewhere. Of course, you ensure they are part-time and, you know, eventually they will leave. So skills development is critical, and I'm sure you have also been braced of the fact that our TVET institutions are being, you know, revived, given current, you know, being properly equipped, many being built. That's a strategy that is already being done. Right. The TVET institutions are now closely being linked with the Ministry of Trade, for example, and the Department of Urban Development, for example. We are working together to see how the artisans in Nairobi who are operating in various markets, those who are doing textiles, for example, in Uhuru Market, those who are doing shoes at Kariakor Market, are linked with the TVET for proper training. We are also working on capacity building for them for training. We are also putting equipment in all those centers. For example, there is now already a facility coming up at Kariakor for common user facilities for the artisans, so that when they produce, they also produce quality and standard goods that can be sold anywhere in the world, both in our supermarkets here, shoes, and even in the regional market. They have already been doing great work. If you go there, you'll be really impressed by what they have been doing with very little support from government, almost no support at all, and in deplorable situations.
Yes.
But we are turning around that again.
To make the environment more suitable. To provide the facilities there, and also link and also training. Small and Micro Enterprises Authority, it's an institution under me, is working on that training, and that facility is coming up. Equipment was bought. We are waiting for the facility to be ready. We put it up. Once that pilot is successful, we are doing everywhere else, including in other towns across the country. And we'll be sure to pursue that and see how that is changing conversations. Waziri, we're out of time, but I would not be forgiven for failing to ask this question. Is it a proposal? It's now part of requirements that we will stop importing cars that are more than 5 years old?
There is that proposal. It is on the table, and it's part of that strategy of industrialization. This country cannot also continue just being an importer of vehicles. So we need the local assemblies and even local manufacture. We want those big companies that manufacture elsewhere to come and manufacture their vehicles here, so that we can also generate jobs for our people. So there is that relook in terms of the range of vehicles to enable assembling of newer models here. And the proposal on the table, let me just say what is on the table and then tell you how soon. The proposal on the table is this. We understand as government for sure that we can't have only rich people driving cars. Even poorer people should be able to. The ordinary citizen should be able to struggle also and drive a car. It is a right. So we can't say, you know, only new vehicles in the market and therefore those who can afford buy. What we have put on the table is that for vehicles that are above 1500 cc, vehicles above 1500 cc, we will stop older vehicles that are older than 5 years. Below 1500 cc, you can continue importing vehicles that are 8 years. So we need to change that for now. Why are we doing this? We think vehicles above 1500 cc are vehicles for people who can afford. Because if you can't afford, there is still that option for you buying a small car. If you want to buy a Prado, then buy a new one so that you can save our environment. Assist our local vehicle assemblers to manufacture vehicles locally, and we generate jobs for our economy. So that is what is on the table.
How much impact would that be
now.
on the cost?
The first year, from June 30th, that is the proposal, from June 30th, no vehicle above 1500 cc will be imported into this market. That is more than 5 years old. The following year, same cc, no vehicle that will be more than 3 years old. The following year, no vehicle that will be more than 1 year old. And then the other year, zero. Completely no new vehicle.
So it has to be
and we are doing this because we'll also be working with the industry to scale up their production so that we have new vehicles actually being produced here.
So by the year 2020, should the proposal succeed, no vehicle above 1500 cc, no used vehicle
no
coming
used
to
vehicle
the market
in the Kenyan market
Okay.
above 1500 cc.
Okay, all right, Waziri.
But we are also, even for the lower segment, because we are finalizing now the automobile industry policy. It is in the final stages, and actually by the end of this month, we will have, because it has gone through stakeholder engagement and all that, it will come. We are working on a policy that will give incentives for 10 years to manufacturers. So we think within maybe half of that time, we'll also be able to produce locally a new car below 1500 cc that is affordable to the ordinary citizen. That once we reach there, and we'll give them incentives, zero tax and anything that require to produce. Once we reach there, then we will close that also for those vehicles.
All right, thank you so much, Waziri. Unfortunately, out of time, but there's a lot more that we could talk about, including some questions that are coming on the East African Portland Cement Company. People asking why termination of over 500 workers without their dues. They have not been released for over 7 months. Do you have anything to say about that in 30 seconds, maybe?
Everybody knows that that company has been doing very badly. It overemployed, doubled its employment. Within 1 year, 500 people were employed, and they were just brought by lorry loads and employed. No skills, nothing. So for that company to be turned around and to do what it's supposed to do, decision was made by a board, even before I came in, to lay off some workers. Already, some land has been hived off and sold to Kenya Railways to get the money to pay these people, and I think part of the problem is the usual delays in terms of accessing that money and paying. So I can assure them that those people are going to be paid. And
you just don't know how soon.
No, I mean it's in the final stages. It was approved by cabinet. The land has already been sold. What is remaining, I think, is the payment. Any time from now, they will be paid. Those who have not been paid.
All right, thank you so much, Waziri. We'll look for more time to engage in that very important pillar of manufacturing and how it will impact on not just the economy, but also the young people who most of them are underemployed or unemployed. Waziri, I cannot let you go without this. We know that Wayaki and so many other roads in the city and across the country are still being constructed. But most of the time we see that these contractors, especially those engaged by the national government, are foreign, most of them Chinese, but of course from some other Asian countries. So we have several engineers in this country. Why can't we use those skills to construct our roads and even some of the raw materials that we get to use on the roads?
Yeah, indeed, there is that challenge, especially for the bigger projects where a lot of those who are given the tenders are foreign companies. And part of the problem is capacity. Look at
the capacity of engineers.
The capacity, not just engineer when you are given a tender, there's capacity also of capital. Capital outlay that is required because government gives you work, you have to get money from banks to service the project until you are paid and all those things. So there are challenges of capacity for sure. There are also challenges of capital. So we have to continue building a capacity of our companies and our local engineers to be able to handle bigger projects. And I also want to say that there are other challenges. You look at some of the projects given to local companies. Even small ones are stored. Where I come from in Meru, go and look at the roads that are stored. Small roads. I was going to the park, Meru National Park, the other day, and a road has been done. There are potholes before it's even completed. It's a local engineer. It's a local company. So efficiency in terms of completing a project.
What's the bigger picture as you approach the future? Because in a few years we don't want to be taking out all our money to the Chinese economies or the Asian economies in constructing very basic infrastructure.
Indeed, Sam, it is true. I mean, it is painful when you have to see these people from outside doing these key jobs and sometimes because you are a foreign company, obviously you repatriate your profits. So it's money leaving the country.
Yep.
So if we could do it locally, the better. But local people must also learn ethical ways of doing things. There's a lot of corruption in some of these things. And sometimes governments are unduty to the citizen to make sure a project is delivered in time. So sometimes you make that painful decision of giving a foreign company to do the work because you have timelines. And a road is a service, not just about the guy who make the money when the road is done. It's also about the user of the road, who is the general public. So that balancing that, and that's why this brings us to this issue of corruption that government is dealing with, and it is affecting everywhere. Go to Ipis and Day, again you see, again you see projects that were started, stored, no completion, local capacity and local problems of people thinking that public funds are funds you access and then you don't deliver what you have been given. And I want you to know, Chinese companies do projects everywhere, even in Europe. Because even the Europeans can't compete with them because they have serious attachment to time and delivery, and they mean business when they are given a job. You see them sleeping in the camp, an engineer sleeping in a camp.
Yep. They want to complete.
Eating his food in the camp.
Yes.
The Kenyan engineer wants to drive a Prado, sleep in the biggest hotel around. The way the Musungus do, it's okay. But then, when you're looking at what you want as a government, you also say delivery in good time. Okay. So that challenge is there. There is that problem which we need to address.
Not to defend them, but some of them, when you speak to them, they tell you that, and you put it correctly, that the Chinese contractors do not have challenges with capital. Some of them rely on the Export-Import Bank, Exim Bank, to finance this project so that the government can now pay later.
No, agreed.
How about ourselves coming up with policies as a government to ensure that even our local contractors, they can have a facility like that so that you can access money to do a project?
Absolutely, and I agree with you. If you look at the change that we are trying to do with our funding institutions, we are creating a Biashara Bank. We are merging some of the institutions that are there for funding companies and businesses to create a Biashara fund that will be geared towards financing small, middle level businesses. We are also working on a credit guarantee scheme for banks set aside a percentage of their money to SMEs.
Okay.
So funding capital, accessibility to capital is a major issue for us.
Right.
I was not, I'm not dismissing that particular aspect. The Chinese and other developed countries have frameworks they have developed over the years to support their companies abroad. And if you look at the US, you saw also the US also trying to do the same again to support their companies. Okay. We are also creating a Kenyan Development Bank that now will be geared towards supporting the bigger players in the industry in terms of accessing capital. So government is alive to that. Okay. Policy is already made. It's the usual slowness in terms of concluding processes. Wow. You have to go to parliament, whatnot. Our constitutional framework that is very expensive for us in terms of making things happen in good time. That needs to be reviewed. And I believe part of this handshake is to look at this framework that slows us from overemphasizes stakeholder engagement, consultation, whatnot, even issues that are so straightforward. You have to spend the money.
Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya, former governor, Meru County. Someone says here on a positive note that CS Munya is basically made for that ministry. He will surely make Kenya a great nation, not only in Africa but globally. May that persist for years to come. I hope he's right, and I hope you prove him right in the coming years. Thank you so much for making time. I will do my best. Right.
And of course, the point is also that it's not just me; it's a whole network. The ministry is really a coordinator The industrialization agenda is shared across. I've told you enablers. Power is part of it. Treasury and all. It's not one department, but we are all wired towards that agenda. The president is properly wired. If you listen to him, what you have seen. But the president, really, his work is to announce and is for us to help him by implementing policies that have been agreed upon.
And we'll be paying a keen attention to that to ensure that what you have said here
indeed
is followed through to execution. Of course, you've been watching Daybreak, and that's the end of our engagement with Cabinet Secretary for Trade and Industry, Peter Munya. Asante sana for coming. Up next, Willis Raburu will be telling you about a few things that you need to pay attention to, but that is after the break. Stay tuned.